My first trip to St. Louis was to give a series of speeches to different agencies, schools, and foundations, then leave. That was my original concept for coming to St. Louis. I've grown up in a situation where I've seen almost everything that's going on in St. Louis. It's not unique just to St. Louis. In Boston, Massachusetts, we have poor people. We have violence, we have drug dealers, we have abandoned families. So when I come here, it's first nature to me. It's not second nature. When I see a child who's been neglected by his parents, I know that feeling, I know that look. I know what it does to you.
I remember when St. Louis was fun. I remember, being able to hang out until 11 to 12 o'clock at night. We used to race up and down the block and enjoy.
This has been a community that has been ran down and a lot of things taken away.
One of the most dangerous cities in the world, the hater capital, where, guys won't look you in your eyes. They say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
I sold drugs, I did all types of stuff in the streets in order to survive.
People don't know how bad it is and some of the conditions. They think they do until you actually see it. I think there's no way to live here and not see the problems. You go 1 mile north of downtown or south of downtown, and it is literally a third world country in our own backyard. I think very few actually know the facts. I think they know, but I think that most of the elected officials would be shocked at the severity of the problems. And yet, when you look in kids' eyes, they didn't want this. They just happened to be there, and they're a victim of the circumstances. Can you imagine the odds of overcoming that type of situation? You would have to be an outstanding, unbelievable, stellar rock star to overcome that type of foundation and make it in life.
"13 kids who lost their lives in a tragic way from the time school started to the end of the year. We are really about saving kids' lives. We're not just educating kids. If you look at the data, quite frankly, the state of Missouri will never be what it needs to be as a state if students in the inner city are achieving to the level they need to. Are there some kids who are struggling and make some bad choices? Yes, that's what kids do. But other places have more support for those kids such that they can get beyond the mistakes that they make when they're in high school or middle school. In the city of St. Louis, sometimes it's a death wish for a kid who makes a mistake. Many kids live in neighborhoods that they have not traveled outside of that neighborhood, outside of going to school. It's my job, it's our job as educators to expose them to things that they would never otherwise be exposed to. Once they see it and they understand what it takes to get there, they can do it. But the challenge is they don't have a vision for it. They just don't see it.
Me remembering high school was the early morning announcements where they were saying whose funeral was or where the wake of or one of my class members or whatever. That's how I remember death, just death, drama, destruction. And I remember with my friend, we sitting in a car rolling a blunt. His head just blew off in front of me. His brains are on my lips and mouth, and it's matter, and it just my partner. We were rolling blunts, laughing, just talking, just enjoying, just conversation. Head blew off right on him. To this day, my partner is not here.
Now times have changed, and it's not like it used to be, because you got guys doing drive-bys, you got guys running up and jumping you. They got the knockout gang nowadays. So if nothing else, just a couple of guys standing out nowadays. If you don't get shot, somebody might walk up to you and try to hit you.
School was so bad that teaching could not take place. In a 55-minute class period, it would take 20 minutes to clear the halls. We had kids walking around who basically had given up on life.
8 or 9 months ago, sitting in this room with a principal from a school named Roosevelt who brought an idea to myself and my CEO about this guy coming in. I didn't know him from Adam. I did some checking around, and he came in and really started challenging people around certain assumptions and about supporting kids in this community.
Dr. Martin Luther King says that we are all cut from the same garment. When he wrote his letter to Birmingham jail, he talked about the white middle class standing on the sidelines not doing anything and being silent. You have to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves.
I learned 3 basic lessons as a young man. The first lesson I learned was it's okay to hit people. I spent years watching my mother be beat by my father. And if my mother can be hit, anybody can be hit. Lesson 2, I better protect myself. Because on the ride home from school, when the white kids threw rocks at our bus and called us niggas, nobody had stood up to protect us. So I learned I had to do it myself. And the third lesson was I don't have to explain myself to anybody. I'll never forget the day my father walked out of the house and he didn't explain himself to me or why he left, so I have to explain myself to you. And along the way, I realized it wasn't just about me, it was about giving back. So I started working with the young folks in the neighborhood who had the same problem I had. No father, an abused mother, drug-riddled neighborhood. And I stepped in to be as helpful as possible.
Let's bring Andre Norman to Roosevelt. That was the first time I heard of him. They were singing his praises, and when he got to Roosevelt, the assembly, it was kind of like, boom!
I can care less how sad you look or what your story is, because it's nothing stopping you from saying thank you. Thank you don't cost money, ain't got nothing to do with a hairdo, ain't got nothing to do with clothes, ain't got to do with the public, it ain't hard to say, it comes from your heart.
When he finished, all the kids wrote letters to me saying that they wanted to spend some time with Andre Norman. Talk to him about some personal problems. They wanted to talk to him about things that were happening in their life that they knew that he could make a difference.
This ain't a game. You want to be in the game? You want to be tough? Be tough. I lived in the penitentiary for 14 years. If you want to be tough, do like I did. Go to the penitentiary, you can fight all day, every day. I spent 14 years in state and federal prison. Every day I'd wake up in prison, I would look for a glitch. That's what prison's about, looking for the glitch so I can exploit the prison to my benefit. Is there a guard who's not paying attention? Is there a window that's not sealed right? Is there a cabinet that I can take apart to make a weapon? There's always a glitch. And we would find these glitches and we would exploit them to do whatever it is that we needed to do. So when I came into Roosevelt High School, there were reasons kids weren't learning. And I walked around the entire building and I wrote down every glitch that I saw that allowed a child not to learn. But the problem is the kids don't live inside of the school building. They go home at the end of the day. And they live in communities, wherever that might be. And if those communities aren't stable, and those communities don't have support in them, then when the child shows up to school in the morning, they're coming from that environment, and it's almost impossible to detach a child from his living circumstance. If you help the school, that's nice. But if you can stabilize a community, you in turn automatically stabilize the school.
Sometimes it takes somebody like Andre to bring the facts around what's really happening on the table so people can clearly see, because we do a really good job of lying to ourselves around what's out there.
He spoke a language to them that many are not able to speak. And the students were captivated by it because of his appreciation for education and his background. He just meshed those together. And him being able to pull stories together and tell it and empower and educate and bring hope. I'm like, this guy is unbelievable. This guy's the truth.
It's that simple. That's how life works. Every last one of these folks sitting around the room has a college degree. They have a job that pays them an annual salary that lets them feed their family and pay their rent. If you want to get a job that's going to pay you an annual salary that you can pay the rent and take care of your kids, I suggest you do the same. I remember when I was 14, when I was in school, I used to play the trumpet. And one day, my friends convinced me playing the trumpet was stupid. One time I had a dream of being a judge. I played a judge in a junior high play. And my friends convinced me, since I was a gang member, I couldn't become a judge. And I gave up my dream of wanting to be a judge. I gave up my dream of playing the trumpet. And being poor was horrible. Not having a dad was bad. But not having a dream was catastrophic for me. So when I see these young kids with no dream, that goes far beyond not having a mom or dad or not having the best living circumstance. Because a dream can take you out of your living circumstance and transport you to another place. And that's what I saw in the faces, that's what I heard in the voices of these young people here in St. Louis. And at the end of the presentation, as we filed out, the principal pulled me to the side and said, Andre, there's a team of people and they want to know if you'd come sit with them and possibly share some information. As we left the school, we rolled out to the home of Susie Spence, and she shared with me all the things that she'd been doing for the last 5 years.
Well, there was 38 known gangs, probably 20 to 30 fights a day. You know, attendance was at 75%. They had not made adequate yearly progress, and I thought, I've got to do something. I don't know what it is.
You learn from what Susie did. You shut your mouth and you get there and listen. And you see what's missing.
They are just kids. They're getting up for school. They're trying to get through the day. So many barriers for them that you're even surprised they're still there.
She was able to talk to students, talk to teachers and staff. Just that simple. And she did that for a couple of months without even moving. And from that, that's when you learn. That's when the population you're working to advance, that's when they see that you are legitimate, that you are sincere, that you won't take advantage of them. And once that is established, you know, it's great possibilities for you.
He was the guy that could push through everything I had wanted to get through because he was the part. He was the kids. He was the neighborhood. He lived it. You're more likely to do things if the person that's asking you to do it has actually been where you have been. After we all had dinner, he said, "How can I help?" And I said, "You can't unless you're 2 feet in and you want to come here. You begged me to come here. I need someone that will literally commit here."
I needed a tour guide because I didn't know my way around. I went to all the different places where I knew my guide would be.
Let me stop at McDonald's for a minute. Maybe I can bum me a burger today. And here's a guy in the urban setting in South St. Louis, inner city, and he's sitting up big time on his laptop. And he said, "I can help you with more than a hamburger. I'll get you a hamburger tonight, and I'll buy you 2 more." He said, "Just kind of show me around the city. Be a chaperone for me for a while." He said, "And I'll look out for you. I won't forget you." And I'd say, "Who's this guy? What is he doing here?"
So we started talking, and I realized this is the guy I've been looking for. I need you to ride with me around the city and show me St. Louis, because it laid the foundation and the groundwork for the work that I had yet to do. As I drove around St. Louis, there's one thing that I found that everybody had in common. They were proud to be from St. Louis. That pride was what allowed me to tie people together. And as I drove around and I saw all the different various neighborhoods, it was just a sense of we're proud to be here, but we're not proud of how we're living. The people who were living in bad situations weren't proud of it. And the people who actually were living in better situations weren't proud that their brothers and their sisters and their St. Louis family were struggling. And for me, the lack of pride in how people were living applied to both sides of the line. There's this huge color divide in St. Louis. There's black people on one side and there's white people on the other side. And it's just hard crossing that barrier. People cross it every day. They try their best to be helpful every day, but there's always that contingent of people who hold to the we're from one side, you're from the other side, regardless of which demographic it is. And that color divide in St. Louis is real. My job is that of a facilitator. I don't take ownership, I don't take over, I just come and I help. I help people bring out what's already in them. So the gang member has a younger brother. He understands that's not the life he wants for his younger brother or anybody else's younger brother. We like to believe that people are sitting in the suburbs ignoring us. And I've come to find out they're sitting in the suburbs trying to figure out how they can connect to us. As I drove around St. Louis, it reminded me of driving around Boston. And I remember the pain that I suffered. I remember the pain that I saw on other people's faces. And I saw it here in St. Louis. What encouraged me most because I saw in my life that pain go away. So if it worked for me, and it worked in Boston, and it worked for my mom, then why can't it work for the mom here in St. Louis? Why can't it work here in this community? The hope that I had through my own personal experience, I wanted to share. I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm just here to bring the hope back, because that's one of the key things that's missing in this city. You're not lacking pride, you're not lacking capacity, but you're definitely lacking in hope. And that's what I specialize in.
I instantly knew that here's a guy that I could work with, because he had the same mission, and it was about making life better for the kids. He's the type of guy that believes everybody can get on the right path, given the opportunity.
Sitting in an office at Roosevelt High School, there were security guards dragging this one little girl down the hallway, and they brought her in the office and sat her in a chair and told Mr. Houston that she had just assaulted a teacher. So what I did is I called Susie and said, Susie, I got a situation. I got a child here who's on the verge of being expelled and is gonna be dropping out of school if we can't get her registered.
Me and Precious always bump heads because you can't be no bigger than me. I'm the mom and you the child. So we used to have problems at home.
I was gonna graduate high school and get a job.
She was gonna either be dead or in jail, cause somebody was gonna kill her because she thought she could whoop the world and she ruled the world. Or she was gonna be in jail for seriously hurting somebody because they was gonna beat her up. Like, I mean, that's that attitude she had. I'm the king, I'm the queen, nobody higher than me, nobody can whoop me, you know. Nobody could do nothing to her. She thought she was untouchable.
I had just lost interest in helping Precious, period.
But it was worse at school because there was people she didn't know, people that didn't care about it, people that I just see coming to school. And so it was like, they got the worst.
So they told Precious, you can no longer come to Roosevelt. Your new school assignment is the alternative school, which is on the other side of town. So when they told her she was going to the alternative school, from the school perspective, it had done its job. The only problem was Precious couldn't get from her home to the alternative school. Her mother needed to go to the school to sign her in. That wasn't gonna happen. And part of her issues did not include getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and taking 4 buses to sign her daughter into an alternative school. There was a local judge who saw these kids being cast off, and he had a concept of setting up his own school to take all these children under one roof.
My initial concerns were simply 35 children that I had identified that had been expelled in the city of St. Louis. All over America, when children reach a certain age that are delinquent children, that have been adjudicated and sentenced to juvenile systems, they will return back to our communities. In Missouri, that age is 18. That 18-year-old child is not the type of child that I want living next door to me. He's been locked up for 4 or 5 years. He has no understanding of what it means to go out and to work a law-abiding job. Yet, he needs money. He has no other lawful means of obtaining money. So he's going to commit criminal acts. It makes more sense to keep children in school as opposed to out of school. You just can't keep these children out of school and expect that our community will survive.
The kids that are in high school have issues that go far beyond math and science. And the teachers are in the building are trained to teach math, science, and basic academic skills. These kids are coming in with life problems. These kids are coming in with hunger problems that schools aren't really equipped to deal with. That's the only safe place for kids to go in these days. Once upon a time, you go to church, you go to your grandmom's house, you go to the neighbor's house. Those days are over. The only safe haven for most kids is school. And the schools just aren't equipped to deal with the issues that these kids are walking in the door with, on top of trying to teach them at the same time.
Mental health is a major, major concern, whether it's trauma, abuse, neglect. And trauma, abuse, neglect takes on many facets. I mean, many of these kids are raising themselves. You don't shoot somebody at McDonald's because they give you cold fries. You don't stab somebody because they step on your shoes. Those are triggers. So you have to say, something else is going on in this person's head.
I put Precious in the car and we drove her to the alternative school and we signed her up. And we spoke to Judge Edwards about getting her in class and all the things that we needed to do. And we got her registered We drove her back to the house, and we sat down, me, Susie, Precious, and her mom, and we just had a dinner, and we talked about education and the things that we saw for Precious going forward. If Precious goes on government assistance, she's gonna get, what, a couple $100 a month in government assistance? Then she gets an apartment, that's another couple $100 a month. Then she has a child, that's another couple $100 a month. Then they have to get free health care, that's another couple $100 a month. Before long, you're easily talking about $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year over the course of 18 years. $20 in a ride saved the state of Missouri the cost of taking care of Precious and her soon-to-be children over the course of the next 18 years. There were a lot of factors that played into the part of these kids doing bad. Most of these kids didn't have the basic necessities that people need to survive every day.
Well, I was forced out the house because my mother, like everybody else, mother in the neighborhood was on dope. And I guess my last Christmas at home, I didn't get anything. And I went a few doors down to a friend's house and cried or whatever. And I saw my Nintendo down there. And people say, how do you know it's yours? Because I saw the fucking name, my name on the present. My mother saw all my Christmas gifts that my father bought. She sold them for crack. Not even on the same street. She didn't have remorse enough to go pawn them or nothing like that or whatever. So at that point in time, I just figured that, you know, shit, if your mother don't love you, no, you know, I just had no remorse or no love for nobody or nothing. I just had to get it. I said I'd never be hungry, I'd never be homeless, I'd never be without. I'll never put my kids through that if I see past 18.
I couldn't control my emotions. I would get upset, I'd become uncontrollable, and the only way I could do was just let it out in rage. It came out for me in rage. Other people, it comes out in drug use. Some other people, it comes out in self-mutilation. Some folks, unfortunately, it comes out in forms of suicide. Mine came out in the form of violent rages. So I would participate in violent acts and hurt people because I was angry and I was upset. That's why I went to jail. I've been locked in basements. I've been rides on airplanes. I've been forced medicated for being unruly and uncontrollable. You name a scenario in prison, I've lived it. I'm not just an angry young man in a Massachusetts state prison. My anger didn't stop at the door. When I came inside, I was extremely angry, and prison is the place you put angry people because there's a 40-foot wall around it. And I was allowed and encouraged to be violent. I was allowed and encouraged to have rage. And that's what I did on a daily basis. And after 10 months of being in the Massachusetts prison system, the state decided they didn't want to house me anymore because I was too violent and too incorrigible. And after 2.5 years of being in the federal system, the federal government decided they didn't want to house me anymore either because I was too violent and incorrigible. And they sent me back to Massachusetts. When I got back to Massachusetts, I was back maybe 10 months before I got convicted with 2 attempted murder charges. Oftentimes, people try to approach these social issues from a social perspective. Susie often said, I have to get these kids jobs. They don't have a way to feed themselves. We took Dr. Lance and put him in a room with Susie, and we came out of there with the concept that we need to get these kids jobs.
Every community across this country, from a state perspective, is losing money. The budgets are tight, the economy has shifted, and so things are difficult for people across the country. St. Louis is trying to reinvent itself. How does it go from the traditional smokestack manufacturing side to the new age of technology? People tend to hang in their sectors with people like themselves. And so you reinforce the same thought processes that your demographic does. Yes, in suburban areas, you have more capital, more access, and so therefore the schools in theory are better. We have to understand that we have to be able to work together in our regions, in our country, by making sure urban areas are strong enough to compete globally.
And the baseline in his studies and his research was it's economic factors that come into play as well.
And so we have to change that system that people can take their God-given talents and be able to contribute to society as opposed to being drained in society. I always say politics and economics are intertwined. We cannot move our agenda forward as a country, as a community, as a city, if we don't make our community smarter. And St. Louis is a great community. They do try to work together. We've had tons of studies, but we need a quantifiable plan that involves politics and economics that shows we're going to create a certain amount of jobs, train for those jobs, and integrate every demographic in it.
What he was saying was from the heart, and I was receiving it. And I thought, I've got to do something. I don't know what it is. The first step, I think, is relationships. You move towards something if you have a relationship with someone.
If you can put quantifiable goals and you're able to put incentives that push those goals forward and allow everyone to be a part of that process.
We want to connect the community of St. Louis County with the inner city.
Your region, your city, your country only can grow and prosper.
Well, it's not somebody else's problem, it's our problem. You know, these are people that either can make or break our community. We're surrounded with crime, we're surrounded with teen mothers, we're surrounded with overburdened prisons, overburdened police systems, courts. A lot of it just starts with the education system. Some people choose not to deal with it, and they're afraid of putting that first foot out or the first hand out for fear of being wrong. I think people are concerned and want to do the right thing, but they don't know where to start.
All the business folks that I spoke to, one thing that was inherently problematic for them was the city has a designation of being the most violent city in America. And there's a multitude of problems with that. But one thing from a business perspective, if you're the most violent city in America, it makes it harder to do business. And they wanted that tag to go away. Oftentimes when I come to a city, I look for people who get shit done. There's no other way to put it. And the people that I know for a fact with a proven track record of getting stuff done are CEOs and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, by definition, go out and they get stuff done. CEOs manage large companies, multiple facets, multiple variables, thousands of jobs, thousands of man hours, thousands of millions of dollars. They get stuff done. They have deadlines to meet. They have board of directors to answer to. They're in a position where they have to work with people and get stuff done. So it only makes sense that when I come to a city, that I reach out to that demographic because they're known and they have the skill set and the capacity to manage.
I wouldn't have been able to pull certain people in the room. And then this guy that flies in for 2 weeks has got all these people around the table looking at each other like, I guess now that we're all around the table, we can actually solve this.
You know, you open up my eyes. It wasn't in my world as well, the issues that we have in our city. Andre asked the kids a couple of questions in the room, said, raise your hand if school's hard. Well, they all raised their hand, right? But then he got to some real questions. Raise your hand if you miss your mom and dad. 80%, 90% of the kids raise their hand in that room. Raise your hand if you're hungry when you go to bed at night. Almost every kid in that room raised their hand. To put it in a sense, I wouldn't even have known to ask those questions that deep, right? And Andre asked them, and I think I was the most impacted person walking out of that room that day.
You know, as far as connecting people, I think it's a really difficult task in St. Louis because people have grown up a specific way and changing those paradigms is difficult. I think there are people that try really hard to change some of those paradigms and try to integrate, but it's still a very difficult task because people tend to gravitate to what they grew up with and what they know. I never really dreamed that myself or anybody I knew could really make a difference in that. That was always, you know, other people working on those things. We're one city. The agenda needs to be the city and the community and how we make that better. And if I can make that better by connecting you with somebody else who can help make something happen, then that's even better.
You don't have to do it for the same reason. And oftentimes people get stuck on their motivation. They want the other person to accept their motivation and do it their way. At the end of the day, the kid who's hungry, the kid who's gonna get shot tomorrow, the family's gonna be devastated, doesn't care what your motivation is. They just care that you show up.
I think people call it the big small town, and it seems like that from the people that you associate with and you spend your time with, but the big misconception is it all is working together, and I don't think it is at all. Ignorance is kind of a tough word, but the things that I've learned, which is just the tip of the iceberg about our problems throughout St. Louis, not just in North City, but throughout, as I share the story of what I'm learning and what I'm doing, it's been very eye-opening for people that I work with. It's very common for people to say, I've spent my whole life here, you know, I'm 35 years old, and I didn't know any of this was going on in our city, and I'm pretty embarrassed about that. My peers that I work with here for sure are very much similar to my background. They have more awareness of it as they get older and what you read in the papers and see on TV, but to have a real life connection and some tie to it is still pretty non-existent. So my first interaction with Andre was at the Juvenile Detention Center. We brought Andre in for the Sunday event, and he came in, I believe, on that Tuesday. And we weren't sure why he wanted to be there Tuesday. It was a Sunday event. He said, you get me for the day, you have me for the week, and I'm here to work. He's introduced me to some gang leaders. He introduced me to other CEOs. He's introduced me to reverends, pastors, rabbis, people that are either in the city that have different upbringings, or people that are from affluent areas of West County that you wouldn't think would have the same issues. And he points out real quickly how they're all connected and they have the same recurring need for just love and support and direction.
Everybody in prison, and I would dare to say everybody in life, reaches a point where they look at themselves and they ask themselves, am I happy with myself? Am I happy with where my life is going? Whether you're married for 20 years, you're in prison for 20 years, or you're on a job for 20 years. At some point, you're gonna stop and you're gonna realize you have one life, and this is it. And is this how I wanna spend the rest of my life? When I looked at my life, I realized this isn't how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And a change needed to happen. I realized I need to become educated. I realized I need to get some stability in my life around my anger management situation. I realized I needed to get a plan. These things weren't new, I just refused to acknowledge them. School had always been available for me in prison. I just didn't go. Counseling had always been available to me in prison. I just didn't go. I decided to go and take advantage of what they had for me. I went to everything humanly possible to actually execute the plan that I had put together for myself. And I put together a plan of going to school and becoming successful. The only thing that really got in the way at first was there's no angry black men classes in the state prison system. So I used to go to AA in 12 steps. I used to go to NA in Big Book. And I would substitute drugs for anger. I would substitute drinking for rage. So there's a lot of people in prison waiting for the angry black man class to show up, or the angry Latino guy, or the angry white guy class. It's not gonna show up. You have to sometimes take what they do have and make the most of it. Stacy Goldman, one of my advisors from the Roundtable and local CEOs, said, Andre, there's a guy in the North Side who's trying to do a project named Paul McKee. You should look him up. We gave Paul a call and we sat down and we had a discussion about collaborating.
I thought I had the antidote. I thought I knew how to fix my city. Over 8 years ago, we set out to try to see whether we could bring jobs back to our city, and that's really, really important. I want my kids and my grandkids to stay here and flourish here and to help rebuild the community to what I think it can become. It can become great again. What's fascinating about it is all you hear about is the gang violence and all the murders and everything. And every time you look at TV, if there's been somebody shot. So my sense for the community was that I was not going to find good people. A great friend of mine said that if black people and white people could sit down and have dinner together, we wouldn't have any issues. So what I've been doing is having dinner with people.
The Northside Project's been on the table for some years now, and it's been held up, not going through. And the objective of this meeting is just to have a discussion about how we make this come to pass, as well as the benefit it is to us as a people.
Right now, your kids have no hope or nothing.
Exactly.
They're just sitting at home in the same old stereotype, sitting there, not going to work, not getting up in the morning, not know that there's a value to get up in the morning. You got to direct them in the right way. So if we all come together and work in the community, it's not about the job, because you can get a job, but if your mindset is not there, you won't stay on that job.
You got young people that are definitely in a position where they're looking for answers.
So how do we get ourselves ready? To me, that's the hardest thing.
You can start at the youth and just develop them, then they have something to look forward to for the future, and besides the neighborhood.
Changing the mindset of our young people and changing the mindset of our community. The more we change their mindset in their community, then a young man like this, he'll have a better understanding of what's available to him. I'm 18, I want to be a carpenter. Okay, well, we finna build a development. All right, that means I'm gonna be on one of these houses, or I'm gonna be at one of these construction sites. He has to understand that the jobs are there, the situation is there. He just has to put his mindset in a frame to whereas he can do it.
You know what I'm saying? We all trying to do the right thing now. More positive, you know what I'm saying? No, and help these young guys to do the right thing, because we've been there. We know how it feels to be broke and not working.
Gang life at 35 is different than gang life at 18. Because now you're older, you have kids, you have responsibilities, you're trying to pay rent, you're trying to take care of somebody else other than yourself, and it's not as easy. And you find that gang life at 35 is a whole lot harder to sustain. But now you don't have any work skills. Now you don't have any employment skills. You don't have any employment training. So you're frustrated because you actually put yourself in a situation that's not working out well for you or your family. So you're kind of trapped. And the frustration is they want to do better. Now they want to take care of their family, but they don't have the skill set to take care of their family.
All other diversity will follow economic diversity. So, and that's what builds community. So if you have economically diverse people, how do you get them dealing with each other? I like to use intersections instead of connections. You got to get them bumping into each other.
I heard that I could be a betterment to the community that I've took away from for so many years, that I've hurt, that I've hated. You know, it's all from self-hate, and I heard that I could change that, that I could straight 360 it and be a positive. I've turned myself from a boss to a soldier, because now, you know, I have someone, you know, who foresees greater than I. So, you know, if your dream is better than mine, man, I'll drive. Just point me in the right direction. So that's where I'm at. What could I do?
November 15th, I'm going home. My ride showed up during the count. You cannot be released during the count. When the count clears and they take the final tally, everybody's where they're supposed to be, then they release people. And everybody who was going home had already gone. I'm the only guy still left going home on November 15th. Count clears, 10:45. I'm in my cell, everybody knows I'm going, and they say, Norman, bag and baggage. 14 years. I've heard them say that for other people. 14 years. I never thought I'd hear my name, Norman, bag and baggage. You get to go. I didn't really have anything. I gave everything away. So I walked downstairs and it was like silent clapping because everybody knows me, been here my whole life, grew up with a lot of these guys. But the thing about prison, the day somebody goes home, your worst enemy becomes your friend. Nobody roots against somebody going home. And when you go out, for that 1 minute, the whole prison's on one page. They're like, I hope he makes it. Hate him, love him, nobody wants anybody to come back. So they call me, we walk downstairs, and I walk outside. It's like a big courtyard. So I walk out into the courtyard, everybody's inside the unit, and I'm heading for the gate. And I'm looking at the units, and everybody's in their window, just watching me walk out. So one of my friends I thought will never get out, and he hasn't. And it was super sad for me walking down that courtyard because it's all I knew. This is what I knew. These are the people that I knew. The world I'm going to, I know nothing about. I watched them as they watched me as I walked out. When I got to the gate, God Tower opened the door, and I didn't look over my shoulder. I just walked through, and the door closed behind me. Walked through a couple traps, doors open, doors closed. 5 seconds later, you're on the other side of the wall. But you would think it was 1,000,000 miles when you're living inside. It was only 50 yards. The guys that picked me up, 2 guys from a program I had signed up to join, we took a picture out front of the prison that day. They were like, yo, let's take a picture. I'm like, man, let's get out of here before they change their mind. But we stood out front and we took a picture. I couldn't believe that I was on this side of the wall. And I couldn't believe that I'm actually on my own now. Because all my friends and all my support and all what I knew was locked behind the wall behind me. I'm able to speak to the homeless folks. I'm able to speak to gang members. I understand school teachers and administrators. I understand wealthy folks in the suburbs. I understand the need in the middle, and I advocate not for myself, but for all sides combined. I don't have a bias or a personal preference towards one group over the other. I believe that gang members need to have job training and have a new direction. I believe wealthy people, they shouldn't be held accountable for what's happening on the other side of town, no more so than school administrators are responsible for every child that doesn't do right.
The only way you're going to really move forward is that we have a collaboration on an agenda that everyone sees a benefit. All these kids need their opportunities.
People are people, and we all want the same things in life. Different levels, different degrees, but really we all want to be successful. We want to have happy families.
My mother can't even look me in the eye, you know, because she remembers the Nintendos and the abuse and the hot grease and the putting spoons out and trying to sell my sister for profit. She remembers that, you know. So I would just say I love you. And you know where I'm at. I'm in traffic every day. My number haven't changed.
These kids may come from broken homes, but they're still smart. They're already outstanding in technology. Could you imagine them going out to a small businesses and get to walk around and see and believe and touch? And they can assist these CEOs in opportunities they may not even see.
I started thinking about other people that I knew that I could maybe connect you to that could help connect you to the right people to really make a difference. And I think that's happened. That's been exciting.
Everyone wants the same thing for themselves and for their kids. And nobody wants problems or challenges or high murder rates or any of that.
We can get these kids headed in the right direction. What is the meanest fallen through the cracks school in every community, and look to make that change. Graduating them to jobs or to the opportunity to go to college.
As an owner, if you could say, well, I'll allow certain staff members 2 to 5 hours a month or an hour a week, 4 hours total a month, to go and do their support during work hours, and then ask those staff members to match some of that time in their personal time. I think that's a first step to at least building an army to attack this issue.
The community allows us to be successful here, and so that some of that is our obligation too, to be willing to do things for our community as well.
So I think if you can just share with people and help educate people that we are one community, and the borders that exist in St. Louis today really shouldn't be there, and that we're really one community. And so if you can reach out across that border, across that line, and do something on the other side and see if you can help out there, then I think it will pay back in spades. Because once one person sees it happen, again, leading by example and mentoring and showing people how to do it, other people will do it also.
Our St. Louis Public School is typical of what's across the country. People are trying their best, but bringing everyone to the table that you have brought has escalated better work at Roosevelt. I don't know how you get people to come. I don't know where you find people, how you convince them to come. But quite often, it's people's expectation of the outcome that keeps them from just trying something. This is a gift from God right here. Don't let anything get in the way of trying to make it better.
And as a result of meeting Susie, I got an opportunity to meet Dave Spence. And because of that connection and because of that partnership, our children had an opportunity to go to the United States Senate floor. And their names were read into the congressional record, not for a bad reason, but for good reasons. They also had an opportunity to visit the White House. And they had, finally, the opportunity to visit the United States Supreme Court. That relationship, that connection, they were all the result of having the relationship with Andre Norman.
There are kids in your city who are dying. There are kids in your city who aren't going to make it. We know this. It's not a secret. We've watched it for many years. And this is your time as somebody from this city to take a stand and not wait for the government, not wait for the police, not wait for a third party to make a difference.
The whole idea of bringing us all together is to know that even when Andre leaves, then physically he might not be here, but as far as I'm concerned, he'll still be here because what he started will continue to grow.
I think we have to be honest with each other. I think number one, we have to be honest to say what the real issues really are and put them on the table, and then talk collectively about how we solve them.
we can make a small impact, and then another small impact, and another small impact, and continue to change the way people think and the way people act, and we can do one little baby step at a time, I think over time will make a big difference.
Yeah, am I more optimistic about where things are going and what influence Andres has? Absolutely. The more I tell his story, people just light up and they want to help. It's happened here at Stone Carly. We have a leadership program, and Andres influenced that part of our group. Then in a big way, our firm has really taken this whole vibe and created a new entity called SC Cares. And it's not just about donating money to kids' soccer teams and things. It's real education and awareness, and our responsibility as being here in St. Louis to help and give back, so it's a lot of time donated.
Drip, drop, sprinkle, drip, drop, let it rain. Drip, drop.
I can still see that little Andre that went through a ton of trauma, that had no one advocating for him, and went the route of every kid that could if they didn't choose something different. And you now are this Andre, and that motivates me that every child down there is the next Andre.
Everybody plays a part, and it's all intertwined. It's like a puzzle, the life thing. Everybody has a specific place that they fit in.
People are finding this part of St. Louis and saying, wow, I didn't know it happened. So it's a new day. It's a new day for our city, so I'm very hopeful.
Let it rain, let it rain.
This guy's creating a situation where I can live better off my marketing, off my distribution, off my intellect, and off my looks. So I'd be a fool if I kept doing what I do, you know? It's the difference between 1 million and 100 million, you know? And he's negotiating and dealing with billionaires, and these are millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of deals. So fuck that street shit. I'm riding with this nigga.
After a year of outreach and a solid plan in place, it was finally time for me to leave St. Louis. On my way to the airport, I stopped at a homeless shelter to talk to a staff of caring people who were doing some great work. They were especially eager to tell me one particular story. A young homeless boy who was staying at the shelter began sharing his dream of a new playground. Only the homeless shelter had no such place for the children to play. This young boy continued to share his dream in spite of the adults not responding. With the help and support of 2 suburban kids who volunteered at the shelter, they together were able to turn his dream into a plan, eventually leading to a playground being built within the homeless shelter for all the kids. At the grand opening, he was pleased to discover the staff decided to name the playground after him for his diligence. As I sat there sharing ideas with this young boy and the suburban kids, I could see more than just hope for St. Louis. I could see a generation dedicated to helping each other. No middlemen, no politicians, no hidden agendas. Just kids turning a dusty old vacant lot to a place where kids can intersect, connect, and play. Funny thing, on my last stop in St. Louis, it proved to be a shining example how complete strangers can make big things happen for tomorrow. Today, I connect people who would otherwise never connect. I build alliances between CEOs and gang leaders. I connect ambitious entrepreneurs to progressive educators. I even introduce the very rich to the very, very poor. I break down the invisible walls that separate these distinct but surprisingly similar groups. I've come to learn that the status quo, they don't want these folks to talk. The status quo want us to be ignorant, to remain strangers, to be fearful, to be stuck. I say ignore these middlemen. Who are they to speak for you and me? As they usually only speak for themselves. Instead, I build alliances. I help bring balance back to your neighborhood, back to your city. I can show how decades of ignorance is instantly wiped away with one single conversation. Better yet, I can show how one chance meeting caused an unbelievable chain reaction. What started out as a one-day visit to St. Louis ended up being a 10-month journey. A journey of mending old attitudes, uniting complete strangers, and building network after network of tomorrow's change agents. I am Andre Norman, and this is Saving St. Louis.